This is an informational meeting with regards to the new comprehensive plan that we've been working on for just about, Joe, what, a little over a year?
It's almost been about a year.
Yeah, it's almost been about a year. Monica is from River Street. There are consultants on this project. Them, along with our committee, worked on this for a long time. Joe Booth, our codes enforcement officer, put a lot of time. I mean, absorbing a lot of time on this. So tonight we're going to go through, and I guess we start with the comprehensive plan, Monica? Yep. And from there we'll go into also some of the zoning changes that are going to be proposed. Now again, tonight is just an informational meeting. If you have some questions, we'll be happy to answer them. If we can't answer them tonight, leave your name, your address, or phone number. We will get back to you. We will have a public hearing on this scheduled right now for April 23rd at our board meeting. So with that, Monica, if you want to get started.
Sure. I can send around if anyone would like to sign in their name. That way, if you do have questions, you can more easily get your email. So I can just send those back if anybody would like to. Okay. Let me first start by saying that I apologize on behalf of Principal from River Street, who would have been here tonight doing this presentation. She's a wonderful presenter. Her mom has felt severely ill, so she was unable to come tonight. I'm not quite as good of a public speaker as Margaret, but I will do my best. So first we're going to talk about the comprehensive plan. As the supervisor said, we've been working on that for about a year. We sort of worked on the comprehensive plan first and then shifted to the zoning because, as you may or may not know, they should be working together. The comprehensive plan sort of sets out the program and policy for the direction the town would like to go in, and then the zoning serves as a portion of the implementation because it's sort of where the rubber hits the road with details about land management and how you would like to see the town remain or move forward. At the end we'll talk about next steps and then any questions or concerns anybody would like to raise tonight, and I'll be happy to field questions through email as well. So comprehensive plans, in general, they establish a vision and prepare for the future. They protect resources, historic, environmental, cultural, agriculture. They articulate local priorities, needs, and preferences. They coordinate existing plans. So if you have other plans going on, the comprehensive plan should look at those and make sure that the comprehensive plan reflects other documents. They could be economic development plans, transportation, recreation. And they generally encourage planned growth that is orderly, consistent, predictable, and cost-effective. In these fiscally difficult times, certainly cost-effective is one of the things most municipalities we're working in are concerned about. Do you have a current comprehensive plan? It was adopted in 2007. Common or preferred practice by planners is that you update your plan every 5 to 10 years. A lot of communities aren't able to do that, so we often are updating plans every 20 years. The town of New Hartford is right in the middle with that, which is great, doing an update after 7 years. That's great that you're getting right in there with an update. Certainly things change even in 7 years. In 2007, it predated the crash, the 2008 crash, and New York State has been sort of regrouping ever since, and especially in upstate New York. Since your 2007 plan, where you had set out several goals and projects for that were sort of milestones for that comprehensive plan, when we looked at the 2007 plan, we saw that actually several things have been accomplished in over a 7-year period. That's pretty good. You're currently doing a zoning update. You've adopted model stormwater management regulations. You completed a Veterans Memorial Park project. You've been working on the Philip Gray Hill Memorial Trail. A lot of stormwater projects have been accomplished, including retention ponds, Beechwood Road, Tibbetts Road, and there's still ongoing projects happening. Most of these were mentioned in your plan, and a lot of them have been completed. There have been road improvement projects and many economic development projects that were listed in your plan. So the first component of a comprehensive plan is the community profile, where we sort of take a look at what the town looks like today. And we look back a little bit and see some trends, mostly related to demographics, is where we look at trends. But this is sort of the list of things that you can look at in a community profile: population, housing, economy, land use, land management, natural resources, transportation, infrastructure and utilities, community facilities and services, and parks and recreation. So this is a quick snapshot of where you are today. As of the last plan that you had, it was 2010 census data, so now we're looking at 2000 census data, now we're looking at 2010. But in general, over the past 40 years, your population has increased about 3.4%, which it's great that you had an increase. Lots of upstate New York cannot say the same. But so your population has more or less remained a nice stable population. The town is aging. Residents over 65 are increasing. More than 60% of the town is over the age of 50. So you have a significant aging population, which has something you need to think about when you think about community services and who your main constituents are when it comes to community services and planning. The town's population is primarily white, with a slightly larger female population. Your median age is 47, so it's not surprising that that is significantly higher than most of the surrounding communities, given what we were just talking about. Majority of the homes are single family, 66%. 94% of the housing units are occupied, 73 are owner occupied. That's a fairly high number of owner occupancy. And the median home value is just over 116,000, which is higher than the Oneida County average. I think there's a couple of communities in Oneida County that sort of drive the median house price, and you're one of them. The town of Paris also has, I know, a high median home value. Income figures, generally speaking, New Hartford income figures are higher than the county as a whole. And some of them figures are median household income is a little over 57,000. Per capita income is 35,754. There's a very low poverty level at 3.9%, which is lower than the county, and in general is a very, very low number. And actually at the writing of this plan, we were still looking at 2011 data, but you also had a very low unemployment rate of 4.3%. According to the census, the most common occupations were in management, business, science, arts, sales, and office occupations, and then at 12% service occupation. Local economy, major employers, as you well know, include St. Luke's Healthcare, Sangertown Mall, ConMed, Utica National Insurance Group, and the Hartford Insurance Group. Your average commute is only 15 minutes. That means most people live and work within a very short distance of New Hartford. That's a very low commute number. So for you, that's great. It has very nice, that's a really positive thing. People aren't traveling long distances. They're getting home a lot sooner. It's a smaller carbon footprint. So those are all good things. And your dominant industries are retail trade, healthcare and social assistance, accommodations, and food service. And the last thing that that we're looking at, this is your land use according to your assessor's classification of land uses. This is not zoning, this is actual parcel land use as your assessor classifies them. So your largest land use classification is low density residential at 23%. And then agriculture actually, vacant land and agriculture are 23%, 17, almost 18%. And then high density residential is 15%. Commercial is 8.3%, which is actually higher than a lot of communities of your land area. That's actually significantly higher than many. Recreation and entertainment, 2.9%. industrial 1.3%, community services 5.4%, public service 2.0. So residential is one of your more dominant land uses, which is not surprising, but commercial is actually quite strong, and agriculture continues to certainly have a role in the community. So then we move to looking at the goals and actions of the 2007 plan, because in this plan we want to, especially since it's only 7 years old, there's a good likelihood that a lot of these goals are still relevant. So when we looked at them, we found actually, in working with the community, that the goals are still on target. They really still are where you want to be. To a certain extent, maybe how you get there has changed a little bit. Maybe the priorities have shifted some, but the goals still remain intact. So I'm going to run through the goals. The bullets underneath are not a comprehensive list of all the objectives that are in the plan, but I've hit on some of the key ones because some have 10 or so underneath them. So when you are looking at your own copy of the plan, you'll be able to look at them more closely. But these do represent some of the key objectives under each goal. So the first goal is to recognize, and they're not in any order of priority, they're all just here together. To recognize the need to pursue avenues of both conservation and development. And some of the objectives there are supporting population growth at a level that the town can accommodate comfortably, concentrating development in settled areas, and using zoning and site development regulations to guide development in existing areas while preserving and protecting open spaces, history, and culture. Goal 2, encourage a pattern of development in New Hartford to preserve and strengthen its neighborhoods. This should be achieved by promoting a variety of housing choices, linking neighborhoods to promote walkability. Walkability is all the rage in planning and community development these days, and certainly it should be something that New Hartford should also seek to improve. Maintain mixed-use neighborhood character and encourage new mixed-use nodes at an appropriate scale, and encourage environmentally green buildings through zoning and development incentives. Goal 3, use public policy as a tool for directing development. Work with regional partners on transportation and environmental issues, utilize land use regulations and design standards to encourage high-quality development that enhances aesthetic character, and again, incentivize green building and site development practices through low-impact development, energy conservation, alternative energy systems, things that generally reduce energy consumption. Goal 4, preserve and enhance the ecology and natural features of the town. So this includes a wide variety of things, right? There's the natural resources, there's prime agricultural soils, and your view sheds. Obviously the rolling hills around here provide wonderful view sheds. Some of the objectives are programs and regulations that include your stormwater management program. So you have the regulations, you have a program in place, making sure that that gets implemented properly. Direct development away from floodplains and other critical natural areas from overdevelopment. Protect scenic view sheds and view vantage points too as well. Support agricultural uses, particularly prime ag soils, and protect and revitalize the Sequoia Creek corridor. Goal 5, maintain and improve regional competitiveness through cooperative economic development ventures and strategies. So this gets to the more economic development side of things, attract and retain high quality jobs, diversify the local economy by identifying growing market groups and clusters, encourage small neighborhood establishments, mixed use settings, participate in regional economic and job development opportunities. Certainly there are some potentially new big economic development coming to this part of the state, and it will be interesting to see how that influences growth here as well as in some of your surrounding communities. Goal 6, undertake and support activities which enhance the quality of life, maintain town's recreational facilities, enhance the town's multimodal options through a network of pedestrian and bicycle paths, enhance businesses and community services for the town's growing senior population, support public safety and emergency services, and support volunteer and civic-minded social and cultural organizations. Goal 7, provide well-maintained modern infrastructure that meets current and future needs. Maintain and improve all infrastructure areas, including transportation elements such as public transportation, sidewalks, shared parking solutions, and traffic congestion. Improve, again, town walkability. Work with utilities and service providers to ensure high-quality delivery of services. Improve homeowner understanding of care and maintenance for individual sewage disposal systems. And the last goal has to do with encouraging efficiency in local government service delivery, promoting collaboration and shared services among local and regional levels of government, and avoid duplication, streamline development regulations and provide a framework that is simple, predictable, fair, and cost-efficient, permit development where roads, public services, and infrastructure and utilities are already available. So certainly promoting infill development as opposed to bringing development farther out into undeveloped areas of the town. So that is, in a nutshell, what the draft comprehensive plan is currently proposing. Obviously, we'll take questions on that at the end. I am going to go through the zoning before we do that, just so that we can then talk about both. It is a draft, though, so the town is still looking for input on this. This is just where we're at this point. For this part of this, I may sort of be gesturing to the map, and Joe, you're right here. You up? All right, so the zoning. We've been working on that for quite some time now. Just in general, zoning governs the way land is in a municipality is used and developed. It must be in accordance with the comprehensive plan. It carries out the town's long-range land use objectives, addresses public health, safety, morals, and general welfare, regulates the uses for property, siting of development on land and density, divides the community into separate districts or zones, and presents them on a map, such as this one. And generally speaking, the zones you'll typically see on a zoning map are residential, commercial, agriculture, industrial, institutional, mixed use. There's many different combinations of districts. Town law does, state town law does allow communities to regulate through zoning, and this is the town law citation, section 261. And sometimes it's good to just remember what it's supposed to be about, which is for the purpose of promoting health, safety, morals, for the general welfare of the community. The town board is hereby empowered by ordinance to regulate and restrict the height, number of stories, size of buildings, other structures, the percentage of lot that may be occupied, the size of yards, courts, and other open spaces, the density of population, and the location and use of buildings, structures, and land for trade, industry, residence, or other purposes. So that's sort of the town's charge. What zoning isn't, and this is important because it often gets confused. It is not the building code. It is not nuisance laws. So sometimes people say, well, what about barking dogs? That's not a zoning issue. Property maintenance, abandoned building, demolition, those are all separate functions, not zoning. Subdivision regulations, while some communities are starting to fold them into one unified code, traditionally subdivision is treated as a separate animal, even though there is a lot of overlap in terms of how they're utilized. Zoning is not related to real property tax assessment. There is not a correlation. That is also something that often comes up. Property value is determined by what it is used for, not what it could be used for. So your zoning is in Chapter 118 of your town code, so if you want to look at your current zoning, you can go to, the easiest thing to do is to go to e-codes online, and you can Google that, and you'll find the New Hartford town code in Chapter 118. So what we're looking at doing is repealing and replacing Chapter 118 with a new code, or with a new chapter. Your last big update was in 1999, which in zoning terms is not that long ago, but it is definitely time for an update. You've had some modifications since then, but not a complete overhaul. You do have some, what could be zoning issues that are not in your zoning code, but you do have chapters on them in your town code, including telecommunications facilities and wind energy systems. So if you're looking for those pieces, they're not in the zoning chapter because they are standalone chapters in your code. From a professional standpoint, I would consider this zoning update to be not a typical overhaul. It is more of a comprehensive tweaking. We did update a lot of things, but it isn't to the magnitude that some communities need to go through to get their zoning updated. It clarifies misleading language, it modernizes definitions, addresses some new issues and uses. It improves the site plan review process for new development. It more uniformly applies building and site design requirements. And there are more development standards to improve quality and aesthetic appearance of development. The effects of the new zoning on existing land uses, just so everybody understands how this works. Permits approved prior to the effective date of the new law will remain approved. Lots created prior to the effective date of the new law that become non-conforming in size or setbacks, so even though we really didn't make many changes to this in your code, but if you do own a piece of property that used to fit the minimum lot size, now it doesn't, the way the code is written and was written this way prior as well, you will still be allowed to build on that lot, especially if you're in a residential district. You can still build a dwelling and put an accessory use on that lot, even if it doesn't meet the minimum lot standards. If you're in a commercial district, you can also build on those. However, you will need to meet the setback requirements that are in the new zoning or seek a variance from the ZBA. Legal uses permitted under the existing zoning that become non-conforming are grandfathered. So if your use now becomes non-conforming, you are a grandfathered use. You're not put out of business as a result of this zoning. What it means to be a legal non-conforming use is that, and you could be a legal non-conforming use from 2 zoning codes ago and still be carrying through. Legal status runs with if you're grandfathered, it runs with the land. If you sell your property, that status goes with the selling of the land. So the use can continue, it doesn't change with owner. If a use ceases operation for 12 consecutive months or more, any future use of the property should either revert to a conforming use, or it can be another non-conforming use as determined by your ZBA, as long as it's no more intense than the current non-conforming use. That's a gray area, and it would be up to an interpretation by the ZBA as to whether or not that new use meets that criteria. The 12-month consecutive time window is the sort of standard time period for all non-conforming uses. This is not new for New Hartford. So your existing zoning had 21 zoning districts. The new map has only 13 districts. That may seem like this means that there must be a drastic change to your zoning, but in actuality, you had a lot of districts with different names that did mostly the same thing. So it was very easy to merge a lot of districts into one, and with very little impact on what was going on the ground. You had a lot of districts, and for some of you, you may well be aware of this, other folks may not, they might not even realize this is an issue, but you had a lot of districts, maybe 8 districts or so, that were called planned such and such districts, planned mixed use, planned residential. Interestingly, it's a misleading term that was used in this prior zoning from 1999, which the town has inherited over the years, that doesn't really affect what's going on the ground on properties, but it's a very misleading term, and for the development community and planners and other folks trying to use your zoning, it was actually sort of it's a kind of a big piece of this that needed to kind of be fixed. But it's more about terminology than it is about what was actually going on in terms of how things were actually zoned. But it has been a very big source of confusion and misunderstanding in the community over these years. So we removed those because you didn't need to use that term, and that term means something that these districts weren't. So by removing that, we also were able to merge districts together. So we ended up with 13. And I'm just going to very briefly walk through them, but a lot of things have not changed a whole lot. You have an agricultural district now. You have them going forward. It looks very similar to the district you already have. So if you live there, not much has changed. On this map, it's the dark green areas. It allows agriculture on single-family homes. The minimum lot size is 1.5 acres, which is just slightly more than it was before. I think it was 1.37 acres. So I rounded up. But generally, it's your ag areas. It's where you have your ag districts that are, ag and markets, designated agricultural districts. Encompass a lot of this area, so it is appropriate zoning where you are, where you do have designated agriculture districts. The residential agriculture district also existed in the existing zoning. There was an Ag 1, RA1 and an RA2. The only difference was, I think, I don't know, something that I can't remember, it was so minor, but you had 2 of them and it was like, I think, a slightly different acreage size. So we merged those together, and they generally represent this color green here and here. And these were split in half. One was the AR1 and one was the AR2. They also allow all ag uses and single-family homes, but on a slightly smaller lot of 1 acre. And again, this is very similar to how your zoning looked before. Residential districts, you had a bunch of planned development residential districts, and then you had regular residential districts. These represent 3 districts you already had. We made very few changes to them in terms of what they do, the uses, the setbacks, the lot sizes. Almost everything is intact. We use them in a few different places. We sort of shifted where they're located, and Joe's going to walk you through a couple of those things. But for the most part, the uses have remained the same. But I'll just walk through them so you're familiar with them. The low-density residential is the largest lot size of the 3 districts. And it allows single-family neighborhoods located more sort of near the village of New Hartford, and sort of as a buffer district between the more intense residential and the RA. So it's this, all of this brown, it's your largest area of the browns, is all low-density residential. Medium-density residential, you're getting a little more dense. I think like the lot size is 15,000 square feet. Minimum lot size, which is exactly what it is now. We carried that forward. That district does allow 2-family homes, including townhouses, so you can have twins, duplexes with 0 lot line. I believe that's a new change to the zoning. And then you have your high-density residential, which is your multifamily apartment complexes, townhouses, existing high-density areas. And that is the darkest brown. You had a mobile home park district before. We carried that forward. The only real change here, it applies to all existing mobile home parks. The only change here is that we added some additional standards. Should a new mobile home park go into one of the existing footprints, or if one was completely redeveloped, there are new standards for what that mobile home park should look like in terms of site development. Okay, moving on to other districts. You have a mixed-use district. You had one before. It was not as used quite as much as I think it is in this zoning. The purpose is to preserve existing areas where residential and commercial are compatible, located, and it encourages new development where there is a mix of small-scale neighborhood commercial and residential uses. It is generally more densely settled areas. All residential types are allowed, so you are allowed single, 2-family, and multifamily uses. And any new commercial development is intended to be at a type and scale compatible with the provision of basic services to the local neighborhood. So it's local retail. It's not intended to be a regional service. Okay, I think you had 9 commercial districts before. Many of them were very similar, and some I had to really look hard to figure out what the differences were. We're down to 3 more pure commercial districts, although they're not entirely pure. We still allow some residential in 2 out of the 3 of them. So the first is the general commercial district, which is this big purplish blue blob. That's your retail service, the shopping malls, the other just general commercial that aren't retail and service related are generally allowed here. It does not allow heavy manufacturing or uses of that nature, but even some light industry enclosed, clean, light industry is allowed in this district. The retail business district, which is the C2, the light blue here, and there's some other areas. That's the combination of a couple of business districts you had before, but it generally runs along some of your more traveled commercial corridors through town. It's a concentration of local retail service and other businesses. There are some existing shopping plazas and things of that nature also along these corridors. So this was carried over, especially down in here. Most of these areas were already zoned some form of mixed use or commercial. A little bit, I think, has converted from residential in areas where there was still some pockets of residential zoning. And then the professional office district is not a widely used district, but it's these little areas right here. This is where you've had, the common theme here was that there's a lot of single family homes, large homes that have been converted and reused for offices, doctor's offices, and other uses like that, insurance. And so these areas promote the continuation of allowing for that conversion, recognizing that at this point they're tipping away from residential uses more towards commercial. There are still homes in this area, and those will be allowed to continue, as will residential in the C2. If there's homes there, they're not going to become non-conforming. But in general, it isn't. These are areas tipping more towards commercial. And then lastly, we have the institutional district. This is sort of a new district, although you did have a planned district. We used it quite a bit, actually. You do have a lot of institutional uses, schools, healthcare services, residential care, religious institutions, government buildings, and they all sort of pop up, which is not unusual, kind of together. So we have a strong institutional district in this new zoning. Most of the areas where it has increased in size from the old zoning is absorbing commercial areas. It doesn't really absorb any residential, because what was zoned commercial really sort of met the same criteria as what this district was providing. And then lastly, there's the manufacturing district, which is footprints exactly the same as your current zoning. We didn't expand those districts at all. There's an area down here in Chadwick, and there's these areas. They're all intact. I think the footprint is pretty much exactly the same. We didn't really change the uses too much in that district. And the building footprints and development standards are pretty much the same. Lastly, you had a Parks and Rec district that we carried over that basically covers your existing parks. You had natural environment overlays, which are not showed on this map. You have a map series that goes with your current zoning that will be carried over. This is to protect some of your critical natural resources or areas that quite frankly just shouldn't be built on, like steep slopes, wetlands, you can't build on them anyway, and stream bed corridors. In addition, you do have an aquifer protection overlay. We did change the uses that are prohibited in that district slightly to more conform with what we typically see in aquifer protection zones. But other than that, this is a carryover from your existing zoning that was kept in place. So that's sort of an overview of the map and the zoning districts. Joe is going to just highlight any areas of change that really popped up. As I said, a lot of it is fairly intact from your previous zoning, so do you want to just highlight a couple of places so everybody is sort of oriented to the...
Sure. They kind of stole my thunder.
I'm sorry. I didn't know how much thunder you had.
What we basically did in this area, Woods Road, Seneca Turnpike area, Commercial Drive area, consolidated it into one zone, one commercial vast zone. Very liberal zoning to the extent that Monica described. Formerly, this stretch along Seneca Turnpike was a planned highway business zone. Didn't get a lot of development out of that zone. It's been changed to a C2 zone, still not our heaviest commercial, but a retail business commercial zone. Other changes are slight. Residential zones, what I've noticed in 25 years in doing building inspections and building permits, we're getting a lot of variances in these areas of town that have small lots. Well, what happened in 1999, they changed the lot size, or the zoning designation, to a designation that was more applicable to our larger lots, or our larger higher end lots in the town. So what I've done, or we've done, is put a zone that more reflects the size of the lots and the standards for those lots. Other than that, we did expand the institutional zone along Middle Settlement Road, where we have St. Elizabeth's now, and Presbyterian Home, and those types of uses. This mixed-use zone was formerly a high-density residential zone. This mixed-use zone still allows that, but it expands the uses in that zone to allow residential and soft retail. The agricultural zones, as Monica said, have been consolidated into 2 zones. We did change the agricultural zone where we've had some residential development, i.e. Heron Landing, Jubilee on Tibbetts. Those RAG zones, they're now low-density residential. They more reflect the use. Consolidated the C2 zone in here. It was originally a similar zone, RB2. This is the Elm Street, Chadwick's area. It had several zones, neighborhood business before, the RB2. It's now all C2, which is a similar zone. Other than that, everything else is pretty much the same.
Any questions?
Actually, I have
Well, I'm
a
sorry.
couple more slides,
Am I
but
jumping up?
that's all right, but I'll just, so just so everybody, so you still have a plan development tool. If anybody here is wondering, well, what happened to all the plan development stuff if we took them all off the map? We took the ones that weren't really plan development districts off the map, but the tool is still intact for any development project that might come along that the town wants to consider. A plan development district, if utilized, allows some flexibility, can allow some flexibility that steps away maybe from the underlying zoning, whether it be uses or the density of how the lots are going to be developed. And you can assemble a bunch of lots and come in for a zoning amendment to do a specific project with multiple property owners. And you can propose one of these PDDs, and we've created 4 types. And the town board does have to do a zoning amendment for it, and as such, the town board does not even have to entertain that project. If they just decide it's not something they're at all interested in, they can just choose to not entertain it. If the town board wants to entertain it, it would then go to the planning board and become part of a full site plan review process. And partially that's to safeguard against projects that they come in saying one thing and then decide to develop another. So if you work together and do site plan and the zoning amendment sort of in tandem, you're more safeguarding against a project you didn't plan for. It is a process. It's not a light process, and I don't think anybody that wasn't serious about a project would come to the town of New Hartford's door the way the program works. However, it can really provide some interesting projects that the town may want to consider. So we created 4 different types that you could entertain, and there's a recreational activity development district. This is something you might see like around a golf course where there's a mix of uses that somebody is proposing. There's a planned residential development district that allows somebody to propose a project that has a variety of different housing options. So it's not just a single family home project, it's not just townhouses. Maybe they want to go in an area that doesn't allow townhouses, so this would be a tool they could come to the town to try to do. The planned mixed-use development, that would be a great one because you would probably see a project where maybe there's a built-in retail mixed-use node in the middle of a project and then have maybe some residential around it or a park. That would be a great project that you may want to consider, where they kind of come in with everything all at once. And then there's a business opportunity where maybe some of the uses that you're thinking of aren't allowed in a district where you're thinking of doing it. But again, this requires a zoning amendment, so it's a fairly significant process, and full site plan. So everything should be in place when the person comes through the door wanting to do this project. So it's a flexible tool, it's not mapped, it's floating, so it's really kind of open on that. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of other updates so that if you're looking through the zoning and are wondering, because this thing's 150 pages long, and it was before and it still is, but just some highlights of new additions to the code. We did add a bunch of things on temporary uses, which aren't really addressed in your current code, but you do have a lot of temporary uses that pop up. The portable storage containers, farmers markets, other markets, vendor trucks on private lands, farm stands, all of those things. There's now at least something in place so that if the town, can sort of make sure things are happening in an orderly fashion. We did expand unique standards for certain uses. You already have a bunch of those. We updated some of them and added others. This is just a snapshot of some of the things we're talking about. Gas stations, home occupations, adult uses, accessory apartments, outdoor wood boilers, self-storage unit facilities, drive-through windows, solar energy systems. I think there's like a dozen more. And you had some of these before, and we've updated those and then added a bunch more. And to a certain extent, some of these are in place because they're allowed in a lot of places, but where they're allowed, the town wants them done right. Site plan review, we actually did make some changes to that, even though it's a tool you've had for a long time. The important changes are that currently your code requires that any change of use, for any use that requires site plan review, which is not uniformly applied in your current zoning, if you just change the use but don't change the site, you still have to come in for site plan review. And yet you're not changing the site. So that's not necessary. Then you're wondering what you're reviewing. So anyway, that has been taken out. However, it has been replaced with a more wide sweeping use of site plan review as a tool. So any new development that's not agriculture, single or two-family homes does require a site plan review, and it doesn't need to be a big, long process, but any new development that's a commercial or non-residential use will now come for a site plan. If you're an expansion project, there is a threshold there, so certain types of expansion projects also will all need to come for site plan review. Your current zoning required it of certain uses, and then it depended upon where they were. So it wasn't really uniformly applied. This is a fairer process. So those are the changes to site plan. We did incorporate non-residential building design standards that also, there are a few for multifamily as well. They're fairly basic, they're not crazy, but they do apply a certain level of standard so that, especially when it comes to formula retail, a developer comes to the door, instead of reaching for the bottom shelf proposal and offering that to the town of New Hartford, now they'll need to look for a slightly better option in that drawer of different building styles that they have, and you know they have 50 of them. So this basically gets at some of the basic design standards that you should be looking for in any development. Like I said, I've seen much more than this includes, but this is what you should have in place for development. And hopefully through site plan review, your planning board can work with the developers to do other things that will also improve. Landscaping and screening, this is also new. We do not really have landscaping and screening standards except in a couple of areas. I think there was one district. So this applies to new construction as well, and then expansions over 1,500 square feet or a certain number of parking spaces. Some of this has to do with perimeter landscaping, so just screening out parking lots and things of that nature. Uses that aren't compatible, maybe if you're the last lot in the manufacturing zone but up against a residential district, that will require some screening if you're going to do a new use in that manufacturing zone because you're adjacent to the residential district. We did assign some basic standards so that the planning board knows what they're working with, so it's not just an arbitrary list of things to do. It is you know, certainly a conservative list, but there are now basic standards. Off-street parking existed before. There was a lot of standards. We just updated those. We did add a piece on shared parking to try to cut down on the amount of surface lots in the town. And we added more direction in terms of what the parking lot design should be to help the planning board and Joe to work through projects when they come through your door. Signage, you obviously have signage standards now. We did update those. Definitions in particular, we provided a lot more clarification as to what's an exempt sign and what's a prohibited sign. We revised the standards a bit in terms of number of size and maximum size. The goal was to reduce clutter, but also allow a fair size for modern storefronts, etc. In some districts, actually, your size was a little small, so a lot of folks are coming for variances. But we also were really cognizant of sign clutter, so we didn't push that too far. And you have a moratorium on certain signs now that continues to be in place, carried over, billboards, etc., carried over from that's in the existing zoning that was carried forward into the new zoning. And we did ban vehicular signs, which are the signs that are on trailers or the basic function of the vehicle is as a sign. Those were banned in the town, and that is not a phased out banning. It would start the day after the zoning is adopted. That is actually one of the most common changes I've been making to sign ordinances is banning vehicular signs. Outdoor lighting, that's the last new piece. We did add some basic standards for outdoor lighting, height of, lighting fixtures in parking lots and things of that nature, cutting down on glare. It's a fairly basic list, but it does, again, provide some basic standards for the planning board and the town. So that's the quick overview. Like I said, there's a lot of little things in there. We'd be here for 7 hours trying to go over them all. Next steps, we're reviewing these drafts with you. The drafts, once the town is comfortable with moving it forward, we'll see what the input is tonight too. They'll then be available on the website for you very soon for you guys to read. I think like next week, that way you can look at things further, and then if you have more comments you can come back. But the draft, sort of as we have it now, will be available so that you can look through that. And then there's planning board review, there's a public hearing, there's seeker, there's the county review which is required, and then there's town board action. So there's a bunch of steps here to go, but we're at the point where we want to get this out to you folks. And that's it.
Questions? Byron?
Hi, Pat, thank you. Very nice
I'm
presentation.
sorry, just, if you would, just give your name.
Byron Elias, a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I didn't see the Zoning Board of Appeals on.
We didn't change much.
No, I don't mean that. I mean of people to do the review as part of the
Oh,
review.
okay.
You've got the planning board, but you don't have the Zoning Board of
That's
Appeals.
up to the town. I know the planning board does have to see it as part of
Seeker.
well, not seeker actually, just natural court. Any update has to go to the planning board per your town code.
Okay.
Certainly, completely great and fine if the town wants to send it to the ZBA for the comment. That'd be great.
The only reason
That's-
I brought it up is because we'll see after it's put into place,
That's right.
all the things that become non-conforming use will end up before us.
Correct.
And then we'll be trying to figure out if we can let them, some
Yep.
veterinarian might want to go someplace, and we might think it's a good idea, but we won't be able to let them,
Right.
type of thing, you know?
That's That's up, yeah.
Any other questions? Ralph?
Yes, Ralph Humphreys. Did I, just to get it clear, did I understand you to say that nobody's going to lose a use that they have today, a legal use, whether it's grandfathered or whatever, that they're not going to lose it because of this?
Correct.
And if it is a if it's a grandfathered use and it's not being, they got a year to keep it going before.
The only two uses in this code, the way it's written, and this is actually a carryover from the old, the only uses that are not carried over in perpetuity as long as you maintain that use is billboards, which were already amortized out, phased out in your current zoning. So theoretically, you really shouldn't have any left at this point because that zoning's from 1999. But if there are some, that phase out is still in place in this zoning. So it's a 10-year phase out, which is what the courts have ruled to be the depreciative value of a billboard, and therefore anybody that has one could recoup their losses. So that's still in place, and the only other thing that would cease to be allowed is the vehicular signs. Any other use that is legally conforming today will be a legal non-conforming use and grandfather going forward. Correct.
Don Backman. I own a piece of property at 3847 Oneida Street, which I believe is currently RB2. It currently enjoys a automotive repair excluding body and fender use.
Okay.
I noticed you've removed that from C2 and you put it only in C1. It diminishes the value of my property. It was built in 1975 specifically for this purpose. I've been renting it out to various automotive establishments. At the moment, it just became vacant. I'm at the bottom of the wheel on this. I don't have an existing use, and it's about, if I don't put something in it fast, it's about to lose the use, and that's unfair. Not only have you affected me by putting all the automotive repair into C1 at the northwest part of the corner, which means everybody in Chadwick, everybody from all over the town, if they want to get their car fixed in New Hartford, has to migrate to that one corner. But you've also just taken the property value of every other repair shop that exists in the corridor. That would be Joe Naimi on the corner, that would be Bentley, that would be the Roadway Auto in Chadwick's. You probably affected between 12 and 24 businesses. It's quite patently obvious that a piece of property with an allowed use has a significantly higher property value than a piece of property with a grandfathered use that could evaporate should the situation occur. I asked the board to either restore the automotive repair use to the C2 definition, or put the C2 use put the C1 use where the C2 use is. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Matt Stubby for Park Outdoor Advertising. Currently, we have 4 billboard locations in the town. So tonight, I can submit to you our reasons to keep that in, to grandfather that in, and then address it at the public hearing. Because we feel that obviously they produce a great benefit to the businesses that are in the region. And I'd like to, at least before we leave tonight, present that to you.
That's fine. But as you just said also, that more is for the public hearing?
Yes.
When
Yes.
you want to make an official comment?
Yes.
But if you want to give them to us, if you have copies for the board, we'd be more than happy to take them. And if you got one for Joe and for Monica,
I sure do.
we'll also review them.
Thank you.
Anyone else with a question with regards to what's been offered here tonight?
I'd just like to make a comment.
Do we have your name?
John Reed with Park Outdoor. Did you realize that there is a state law that you cannot take a billboard without paying for it?
Yes. You can't take one on a, are they located on state roads?
Primary highways.
That is the case.
Right.
We don't actually have to zone for that, but that is the case if they're on primary highways.
Yes.
Any other questions? Dave?
The medium density zone, show us where that is and define that again, please.
Medium density is the medium brown.
Everything from Janet Terrace, Bolton Road, area behind the library.
Okay, and that makes smaller,
It makes,
smaller lots.
yeah, especially,
It
well,
allows smaller lots.
correct, it also allows a 0 lot line
Okay.
townhouse now, where you have an owner invested in his own property. MDR, Merritt Place, still, it's always been MDR, the Manors, MDR.
Okay. So the only change there is it allows a 0 lot line.
Home ownership by the individuals.
Okay.
Right, that's only, and we didn't change the lot sizes or anything of that nature.
Any other yes, Paul?
On the mixed-use area, have we set restrictions yet on the amount of units per building?
We do not.
Okay, because that, maybe we should, just a 1 to 4 units or something like that, because somebody could put a 100-unit building in and then put mixed use downstairs and commercial, and it's gonna be really.
You do have actually, maybe I believe you already have, and I think you carried over, your definition of multifamily is, so if it's not an apartment building, in other words, I think there is a certain number of units. However, an apartment building would be treated as an apartment building. But we did not further cap any sort of mix of uses within a building.
But even like for mixed use, the definition, actually, you would be able to put commercial downstairs and put 100, even if it's an apartment building,
Right.
it still goes under classification of mixed use.
Yes.
So somebody could avoid going in an area, putting a 100-unit building up, putting one little small commercial store downstairs, it would be considered a mixed-use building. So maybe.
The district doesn't actually just require that the buildings be mixed use. So that could happen anyway under that district, because
Right.
we allowed a mix of standalone one-use buildings as well. So that could happen, but also the guy could put my point is just the apartment building he doesn't need to try to end run around the mixed use thing, because he could just do an apartment building in this district. The mixed use connotation is more a function of the entire district, not individual buildings. So that could happen either way, by itself
So
or as a mixed building.
We're actually, just so everybody can see, where would be the mixed-use areas then?
There's this area here.
Off Clinton View and Clinton Road, where the high-density residential is now, and the Citron Home property over on Higby Road. But
So that's what I'm it's an area that,
to answer your question
Yeah.
specifically, Paul, because you have a height limitation and you have a coverage limitation, you inherently regulate the number of units.
so what would you say would be a restriction for, units up there? Like, I mean, would you?
Depends on the parcel size.
Right.
Okay.
So the density is driven by the amount of land you have.
Okay, so somebody can go.
So there
up-
is a cap in that sense, yes.
Right, okay. Well, I'm just saying, it's not an area that could take that much congestion, I think, and that's what I'm looking at, is that you don't wanna put a 100-unit apartment building up in that area, and now you have all that traffic, and,
Right.
And
Absolutely.
flooding issues and everything else
Yep.
that's going on currently right there, so.
Well, we could certainly look at that district again and see about capping the density size, especially if there is
Yeah.
more land than there's appetite or carrying capacity of the land for a lot of units. So we could certainly look at that.
Yeah, something that just caps it kinda so you don't have that congestion right there. But maybe like even, condominiums or 1 to 4 unit, places, but not go above 4 units in one building per se.
Yep,
Maybe like a ratio or something.
yep, definitely do that.
The information that's gonna go online, the information that's going online, is it gonna be just this? I don't mean just this, but is it going to be this program online? Or is it gonna be detailed so that you can see the way it is and the way it was and the way it is proposed?
No, it's way too much of an overhaul. Like, there's no way to strike through and underline this.
So how do you?
You would have to,
Take the old
you'd have to look at the old,
there.
cruise through that or compare. I mean, a lot of things sort of set up in similar locations. But there was enough changes here that it literally would have been struck through and underlined. I mean, there's no way to correlate the two.
Will it be in a Word format?
Online, not typically, it's usually a
Is there
PDF.
some way to highlight what is different?
I'm sorry, Dave.
I said, is there some way to highlight what is different? A different
Can't
path?
redline it
Well-
or anything.
No, I mean, it's literally,
It's different,
it's
yeah.
thousands of changes, and whole sections.
Makes it difficult to actually see
Yeah, I
what the
understand
changes
that.
are.
Yeah. There is really not a red line
Well,
version.
I was interested.
There's just
whatever
really no
body
way to
shops
do
are-
that.
are already
If it was a smaller update,
Whatever it's
there
going
would
on
be
in the manufacturers. So they have to
20,
be
30
in the
changes,
mixed
but we're
user,
talking,
their body shops uses
I don't know, 1,000? I don't even know, it's that significant.
So
But
what's
it's not-
going online is the
the new-
proposed
Correct.
from
ones that are
A to Z. All of
Yes.
this? Okay,
Full draft will be on there, and you can also access the current one.
okay.
So, do you have that on your website as a link?
I go on your post all the time.
Yeah, but we know to do that. Do we have a link?
Yeah.
Okay, so the current.
Folks, can we just keep it down? It's hard to hear up here. with-
So there is a way to compare, and it's
Yes,
cumbersome, but
it's
it's there.
cumbersome, but it's there.
Okay.
If you're looking for, I will say this, so the districts in the current zoning, if you're trying to do a comparison, online, all of the use districts have, in your current code, have their own, every district, all 21 districts have their own chart. So there was 21 tables for the current zoning. The new zoning puts all the districts on one table, and they just run along, and all the uses are on one table, so it's long, but it's one table. And then there's one table of all the lot development standards. So when you're trying to look at both, just know that it's set up differently, so you're gonna have to toggle back and forth in terms of, I'd almost recommend just printing both out. That's the only way I was able to. So anyway, this is a much more streamlined way of looking at it, but the current one with so many districts, it's a little bit more cumbersome. to
Ralph, did you
compare.
have a question?
Yeah, yes, I did. On prohibited signs, it says signs held by humans located off premise or in the public right of way or a public parking lot. Does that mean we're outlawing protesters?
No,
How do you, this doesn't leave much
Commercial
space for
signs,
them.
Ralph. Advertising signs.
Signs held by humans, okay. But it doesn't say, it just says signs held by humans. It needs to be cleared up.
But our, you know, Ralph, you were a supervisor, you know that our laws are always, come after federal law and human rights and everything else. So, we can't supersede the Constitution of the United States.
the intent is the human signs that are directing, they're essentially off-premise signs, directing people to businesses. Sometimes they're on-premise, but they're on the corners in the right-of-way, directing people to businesses. That was
So,
what we were.
so
Advertising.
liberty tax preparation
Like those things.
would be outlawed? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes. Anyone else? I'm sorry, sir.
John Reed with Park
John.
Outdoor. I just had a question, this is probably for Joe. How much is the site plan review cost?
The costs remain the same.
Pardon?
The costs remain the same. There's been no change in site plan review costs.
Do you know what it is?
Well, there's preliminary, it's too
Well,
complicated to explain. There's a $250 preliminary fee, there's a parking space fee, and there's a $500 final fee and a parking space fee. There's also an acreage increment. Without site-specific details, I can't give you specific numbers.
So it's maybe $700, $800, which is something that now is going to pertain to every project?
Everyone that requires a site plan review.
Okay. I'd like to address, when I looked at the chart, I saw everything went from permitted uses to site, special use permit. Can you tell me what the special use permit, is it something that can be approved or denied? Is it subjective, or, and what is the fee attached to the special use permit? Why would you take a P for a permitted use and take it to a special use permit for just about everything in your commercial zone.
No, almost,
No, there's
special
very
use
few.
permits are not required for most of it, it's
Oh.
site plan review.
It's all
that's
site plan
required.
review, yeah.
It's not
It's not
site
special use permit?
No,
site plan.
there's very few special use permits.
And the
There's very
site,
few, this code actually has fewer site plan or special use permits than most codes, I have to
Yeah.
actually tell you. And we didn't increase them by much, if at
but
all.
you've taken most of your permitted uses and you've taken the site plan review, which is.
A lot of uses did require site plan review before, but it depended upon what district they were in. Some uses in one district did not require it in other districts. That's not that common. Most zoning sort of sets a threshold that everybody meets, and you fall above or below the threshold. Having individual uses so singled out, which your code really did, was not a really fair, uniform way of applying zoning. I mean, I've seen it before, but it's definitely, was used more widely here than in a lot of places. This following it with a threshold is actually the more common practice because it's more fair to, if you were on one side of the road, maybe you didn't need site plan review, you just fell in another district and now you do. So this is actually a more fairly applied approach. Again, the town can certainly decide to go back to the other way and we can, you know, shuffle the SUPs and the SPRs on the table. So, I mean, this was the approach that we took to more uniformly apply the town code, but it certainly could be reworked if the town wanted to do that. It's fine.
Paul, did you have
I'm
something?
good, I can just.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay, with that, Monica, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Okay. Just glad it fired up.
Thank you for coming up. Joe, thank you for everything. I want to thank the committee, Joe Booth, for doing a wonderful job. River Street, you did a great job for us. I want to thank you again. The public hearing on this is April 23rd. It'll be held here. After
We'll
that,
get the plans up. Both of these will be up next week.
next week, they'll be on the website, so you should have more than enough time to go through them. If you want to make comments, obviously, the public hearing is the time to make them. After that, then we go through the secret process, the county process, etc. The hope is possibly, time-wise, is that we get this passed either at the last meeting in May or the first meeting in June. This has been a project that was first thought of long before I even took office in 2010. So we're finally bringing it to fruition. So we want to move and get this done as soon as the building season starts or right after. So if there's no other questions, then for you folks that want to have comments, we'll see you on the 23rd of April. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job.